The sun hung low in the dust-choked sky, casting long shadows across the bones of a ruined city. Sand drifted endlessly through its streets, soft as snowfall but deadlier than time. What had once been a hub of alien life was now a graveyard of broken spires and eroded monuments. In the silence, something stirred. Tiny bare feet left shallow impressions in the shifting dunes. Nairai walked slowly, her pale blue skin blistered from exposure, her silver-white hair tangled and matted with grit. Her large, luminescent eyes scanned the wreckage for movement, not for hope. She had long stopped believing in that. But for danger, she moved with a quiet instinct to prey, each motion taught by survival rather than choice. She hadn't eaten in days. Her stomach had stopped asking. Now it just gnawed in silence. In her small hands, she clutched a fragment of cloth that had once been her mother's shawl. It was all she had left. That and the voice in her head, soft and trembling, whispering not to cry, not to make noise, not to be seen. She stumbled. Her legs, thin and shaking, betrayed her for a moment, and she fell face first into the sand. She didn't rise immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes and let the heat press down like a blanket. Maybe if she stayed there, the world would forget her faster. A low growl made her freeze. The sand around her shifted, and a shadow loomed, broad-shouldered, scaled, and low to the ground. One of the desert scavengers, bone-clad and sharp-eyed, was sniffing her scent. Its forelegs moved with precision, and its mouth hung open in a lopsided grin, revealing rows of teeth meant for slicing flesh from bone. Nairai's heart pounded. Her limbs refused to move, but her eyes fixed on the creature with a mix of fear and resignation. She had escaped these things before, just barely, but not today. Today, there was nowhere to run, and no strength left to try. The growl deepened. The creature crouched. A deafening crack split the silence. The beast's head jerked violently, a hole appearing just above its right eye. It crumpled instantly into the sand, kicking once before going still. Nairai blinked. Smoke rose in a wisp from the upper ledge of a half-collapsed building. She didn't move. Couldn't, until he stepped into view. The man was massive, armored but stripped of any insignia. His skin, dark and weathered, glistened with sweat and dust. Across his back was slung a compact rifle, still cooling from the shot. His chest bore old scars, some from blades, others from burns. Tattoos, faded but defiant, traced his arms in looping patterns of a culture no longer practiced. He looked down at the girl, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the two stared at each other across the corpse of the beast, one small and trembling, the other strong and still, both out of place. Then, slowly he knelt. Nairai tensed. This one looked like the soldiers who'd come before, who had brought fire, not mercy. But he didn't speak. He didn't make sudden movements. He simply extended a hand, palm upward, fingers loose. She didn't take it. Instead, her gaze dropped to the weapon on his back. Her people had died under that kind of fire. Her mother had screamed when the humans had come. Nairai remembered the sound, a high, thin wail that pierced even the thickest bunker walls. He noticed her look, and without a word, he reached behind and unslung the rifle. Slowly, he placed it on the ground beside him and pushed it away. Still, Nairai didn't move. Her knees buckled beneath her, and she dropped back onto the sand. He sighed, an exhausted, almost broken sound, and reached into a pouch on his hip. From it, he produced a small water pod, dented and half full. He rolled it toward her gently. The pod stopped at her feet. She stared at it. Then, cautiously, she picked it up and bit into the nozzle. Cool water burst into her mouth, and her hand shook as she drank too fast, coughing on the liquid. She coughed again and looked up, water still dripping from her chin. He hadn't moved. "Kale," he said softly, tapping his chest. She didn't reply. "Kale," he repeated, then pointed at her, his eyebrows lifted in question. Nairai opened her mouth, then closed it. The name of her kind, of her family, belonged to a dead world. But finally she whispered, "Nairai." He nodded. Nairai. For the first time in days, she felt something other than fear. Not trust, never that, but maybe the edge of it. Kale reached into another pouch and pulled out a ration bar. He broke it in half and offered her one piece. She hesitated, then took it, her small fingers brushing against his for a second too long. They sat like that for several minutes, saying nothing. The silence wasn't empty anymore. Kale finally rose to his feet, towering over her. He looked to the horizon, to the flickering heat lines where the desert swallowed all paths. Then he looked down at her again, as if weighing a decision that had already been made. He reached for his rifle, slung it back over his shoulder, then bent down once more and extended both hands. This time, to lift her. She took them. Nairai was featherlight in his arms. He carried her with the ease of a man used to burden, and she let herself lean into the warmth of his body, though her eyes never stopped watching the world. As they walked away from the corpse of the beast, the ruins faded behind them. Kale moved with purpose now, his eyes sweeping for signs of danger. Nairai, curled against his chest, clutched the ration bar and her mother's cloth. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say in the language of war. But with every step away from the wreckage, the silence between them grew a little less hollow. Nairai didn't understand who Kale was or why he had saved her, but she knew monsters. She had lived among them. She had seen what they did when no one was watching. And this man with eyes full of sorrow, was not a monster. Not yet. The heat never relented. Even under the pale sky, dulled by dust and radiation, the air pressed down like a weight, thick with memory and regret. Kale moved with deliberate care, boots crunching over fractured stone and soft sand, the little alien girl clinging lightly to his back. She hadn't spoken since they'd started walking, not out of fear anymore. He could feel it in her grip, but something quieter, more wary. She was measuring him. He was used to silence. After years of war, betrayal, and exile, he preferred it. But hers was different. Her silence asked questions, demanded answers he didn't have the words for. They moved through the skeleton of a city once teeming with life. Structures carved from stone that hummed with a residual alien energy, their glow long since faded. Vines dry and brittle, hung from archways where banners might have once flown. The deeper they walked, the more intact the ruins seemed, as though the core of the city had resisted decay, holding on to the last breath of a civilization wiped clean. Nairai tapped twice on his shoulder, a soft signal. He stopped. She pointed toward a crumbled building, small and half-sunken, marked with symbols etched in the rock. Kale narrowed his eyes. He didn't recognize the language, but he could tell the place meant something to her. "You want to go in?" She didn't answer. Instead, she slipped from his back, landed softly, and padded toward the entrance. Kale followed, hand near his weapon but not drawing it. Inside, the air was cooler, almost damp, and smelled faintly of metal and ozone. Light filtered into the cracks in the ceiling, illuminating rows of etched panels along the wall. Stories and symbols. Nairai touched one gently, brushing off centuries of dust. Kale watched her. She wasn't just remembering. She was mourning. This had been her world, and all that remained of it were fading images carved in stone and the lingering ghosts of soundless stories. She stepped to the center of the room and placed her small hand into a circular indentation. A soft pulse radiated outward, and for a moment, the wall flickered to life. An image projected in faint light, blurry and incomplete but unmistakably alien. A family. Her family. Kale's breath caught. The figure of a woman, taller, strong, with the same pale blue skin and silver hair, held Nairai as an infant, smiling in a way Kale hadn't seen in years. Real, not staged. Alive. The light faded, and Nairai lowered her hand. He knelt beside her. "Your mother?" She didn't nod, but her eyes said yes. Kale looked away, suddenly self-conscious. He remembered holding his own daughter once, before the first bomb fell, before his wife had stopped asking where he was going every time the alarm sounded. "She hid you, didn't she?" he said quietly, before it all fell apart. Nairai turned her face toward him. Her eyes, too large, too ancient for a child, locked onto his, and something passed between them. A recognition. They were both what remained. A tremor shook the ground, faint but distinct. Kale stood instantly, weapon drawn, scanning the shadows. Nairai froze, then darted to the doorway and peered out. Nothing. Another tremor, stronger this time. Kale cursed under his breath. Earthquakes weren't common here, unless something deep beneath the surface stirred. And he'd learned long ago that natural was a word the planet no longer respected. Time to move, he muttered. They left the chamber. The air outside hotter now. On the horizon, black smoke curled upward. No fire, but something smoldering. Kale didn't like it. They didn't speak as they moved, but Kale noticed Nairai kept closer now. Once she would lag behind, watching him carefully. Now, she shadowed his steps. She wasn't trusting him, at least not fully, but she had chosen to stay. That counted for something. By dusk, they found shelter in the hollowed-out shell of a transport vessel, its engine core long dead, its walls rusted but intact. Kale set up a perimeter with small proximity charges, not enough to kill, just enough to warn. Inside, Nairai huddled near a broken control panel, legs pulled to her chest. Kale sat across from her, eating from a ration pouch and offering her the second half. She took it without a word. As they ate, Kale reached into his pack and pulled out a faded photograph, a relic he kept more out of penance than sentiment. It showed a girl, maybe 7, sitting on her mother's lap. Both were smiling, the kind of smile that didn't know what was coming. He didn't show it to Nairai, but he held it a little too long. Was she like me? Nairai's voice was barely audible, more breath than sound. Kale blinked. It was the first time she'd spoken in his language. Broken, unsure, but clear. No, he said after a pause. She was human, like me. Nairai considered this. Did she cry? Kale swallowed hard. Yeah, she cried. Did you find her? He looked down. No. Silence fell again, heavy but full of understanding. Nairai reached into a pouch at her side, a small one sewn from scraps, and pulled out a smooth shard of crystal, its surface etched with the same markings from the chamber earlier. She placed it between them. Others, she said. Hide. Kale leaned forward. You think others are alive? She nodded once. Below, deep. His breath caught. The wind howled low and constant as dawn peeled over the broken skyline, painting the ruins in hues of ash and blood. Kale checked the perimeter charges one last time, his instincts tight with unease. The tremors had returned in the night, stronger, closer. Something was waking beneath the sands, something not of Earth, nor entirely of this world. He didn't know what yet, but he recognized the weight of it, the kind of silence that preceded only two things, a storm or an ambush. Nairai stood near the edge of the derelict vessel, her bare feet firm on metal warmed by the rising sun. She didn't tremble now. She watched the horizon with eerie stillness, her eyes catching flickers Kale couldn't see. He had begun to understand that her silence wasn't born of fragility. It was born of listening. To what? He wasn't sure. But the girl was connected to this place in a way he'd never be. She turned to him, holding out the crystal shard once again. In the weak light, the carvings on it shimmered faintly, pulsing with a dim internal glow. He studied it closer this time. There was a pattern to the markings, etched deep into material, too precise for decoration. Coordinates, perhaps a map. He gestured for her to show him. Nairai knelt, traced the lines in the dust using her small finger. The diagram unfolded, a descending spiral, layered tunnels leading into the depths beneath the city. At the base, a mark circled twice. That's where they are? Kale asked, voice low. Nairai nodded. The heart. He tasted the word. Not a place, but something more vital. A command center. Maybe a sanctuary. Or something worse. Can you take me there? Nairai didn't answer immediately. Her eyes flicked to the sky. Then, slowly, she nodded. But they will come. Who? She didn't have a word for it. She simply pointed toward the east, toward the smoke they'd seen yesterday, now thicker, darker. Something was moving there. And whatever it was no longer hiding. Kale packed quickly. Ammunition was low, food lower still. But they couldn't wait. If what Nairai said was true, others like her had survived, hiding underground, unseen by the scanners of Kale's former unit, forgotten by both enemy and ally. As they moved, the path grew narrower, broken by collapsed structures and deep fissures in the stone. The descent began at a jagged crater where part of the city had caved inward long ago. Stairs, if they could be called that, spiraled downward through shattered masonry and rusting alien alloys. Nairai led without hesitation. This was memory for her, etched into her blood. Kale followed, rifle drawn, every echo tightening his jaw. The further they descended, the cooler the air became. The walls began to hum faintly, vibrating with buried power. Light from the surface faded until only the crystal in Nairai's hand illuminated their way, casting blue shadows that danced across carvings older than human memory. They came to a door, massive, split in half by an ancient blast. Beyond it lay a vast chamber. Not ruins, but living architecture. Pillars arched like the ribs of a beast, and in the center, a stone platform floated inches above the ground, humming in slow rhythm with Nairai's crystal. Kale stopped short. Shapes moved around the edges. Silent, watching. He raised his weapon, but Nairai stepped in front of him. A figure emerged. Tall, elegant, draped in tattered robes once rich with color. Its skin bore the same pallor as Nairai's, though age and time had dimmed the glow. Its eyes locked onto hers, and it knelt. "Child of the line," it said in a voice like rusted wind. Kale lowered the rifle slightly. The figure's eyes flicked to him. There was no fear, only assessment. Nairai stepped forward, holding out the crystal. The figure took it reverently, placed it into the heart of the platform. The moment it touched, the entire chamber pulsed with light. Dormant systems surged awake. Vents opened, panels unfolded. Holograms burst into being, maps, data, history. The chamber wasn't a sanctuary. It was a control room, a nerve center buried to protect what little remained. The elder turned to Kale. "You carry the scent of fire and ash. Human soldier, your kind brought ruin." Kale met its gaze without flinching. "I didn't come to finish what they started." Silence stretched between them. Then the elder looked to Nairai. "She called you." "I found her," Kale corrected. "She survived." "She called," the elder repeated, gesturing toward the walls now glowing with signals. "You were drawn here, not by chance, by bond." Kale felt a chill crawl beneath his skin. "What is this place?" "The heart of Atheon," the elder said. "The last breath of our people. She is of the line that binds it. She awakened it, and now it calls to what remains. Of your people? Of all who still listen." The ground shook again. Stronger. Dust rained from the ceiling. "They are here," Nairai whispered. Kale turned toward the corridor. The sound of boots. Not many, but enough. Scouts. He pulled his rifle and checked the charge. One full burst left. "Maybe two. We have to defend this place," he said. "No," the elder replied. "You must carry her beyond." "I'm not leaving." Nairai looked up at him. There was something in her expression, resolve sharper than fear. She reached into the platform, pulled out the crystal. The hum faded, but the glow deepened. "She is the key," the elder said. "If they take her, all of this dies. Again." Kale's gut clenched. He looked at the hallway. Movement in the dark. He dropped to one knee, pulled Nairai close. "Do you know a way out?" She nodded. He looked at the elder. "Hold them." "We will." Kale scooped Nairai into his arms, her fingers clutching the crystal. Then, without another word, he ran. Behind them, the sound of conflict echoed, ancient weapons discharging, voices raised not in panic, but defiance. Kale didn't look back. They moved through maintenance shafts, service tunnels choked with roots and rust. Hours seemed to collapse into a blur. He stumbled more than once, fatigue nipping at the edge of his vision, but Nairai never asked him to stop. At last, they emerged into daylight. A canyon cut through the land, green creeping at the edges. Life. Kale dropped to his knees, panting, the taste of blood in his mouth. Nairai stood, barefoot in the grass, looking back toward the ruins. Her eyes shimmered. He looked up at her. "What now?" She turned slowly, the crystal now pulsing in rhythm with her breath. We wake the rest, she said, and for the first time, her voice didn't sound like a child's. It sounded like a beginning,